up at the top, it talks about deductive reasoning is the process of showing that certain statements follow logically from agreed upon assumptions and proven facts. So notice it's proven. We are not just observing and making a statement like we were yesterday. Okay, like we know this to be true. This is a principle. This is a definition. This is a concept. These are things that we already know to be true. Like a very simple example is when you're solving an equation, you're using mathematical principles. That's deductive reasoning. Okay? If you are sitting in the garden and watching butterflies and noticing that they, sit on certain flowers and not other flowers, and you make a conclusion, that is, inductive reasoning. You are observing and drawing a conclusion, okay? So make sure you understand the difference between the two, all right? All right, so example 1 here, you should be able to figure out on your own, so see if you can, and pay attention to directions here. Classify all 3 angles, okay, as acute, right, and obtuse, which means that maybe you might want to figure out the measure of them, but that's up to you. All right, so see if you can do example 1. All right, so if you're confused, very first thing, reading, it says AC bisects angle BAD. Well, if BAD is 120, what's BAC?
60.
Done. Is 60 degrees acute, obtuse, or right? Okay. If AC bisects, what's CAD? What's its degree measure? 60 degrees. Is that acute, obtuse, or right? It's acute. Okay. 120. Is that acute, obtuse, or right? All right. So what are we confused on? All right. Do the same thing we just did. Just do it for the next 2 examples. So, on the second one, what's BAC? What's its measure? Start with that. 79, and then 79, and they are both acute, and the 158 is obtuse. Okay? All right? And then on the 92, the 2 angle measures are 46 and 46, which makes them both what? And 92 is obtuse. Okay. All right, so if an obtuse angle is bisected, then the 2 newly formed congruent angles are acute. Okay, so we have a student over here that says that's not always true because 180 degrees is obtuse, and when you cut 180 degrees in half, you get 90, which is not acute. Are you agreeing with that statement? What do you think? So let's start with.
Well, isn't an obtuse angle more than 90 but less than 180?
So can it equal 180?
No.
What is it then? It's a straight angle. So 180 degrees is not obtuse, therefore it's a straight angle. Okay, therefore it does not fit into this idea because a straight angle cut in half would make a right angle all the time. Okay, so your theory would work if 180 degrees was obtuse, but it doesn't fit. Okay, all right, so this is true. So now, one of the concepts that I said we were going to focus on today is, making sure we understand the difference between inductive and deductive. What concept did you just use there? Did you use mathematical principles or did you observe? So you're going with deductive. Okay, so if you're going with deductive, give me the mathematical rule that you applied. Abby, what are you going with? You're going with inductive. Why?
Because we're observing what we just calculated.
Yeah?
With those, and we figured it out. It's not like we know a definition towards it.
I like that reasoning. I would go with inductive. So basically, right now, it would be very similar to last night's homework. Okay, remember last night's homework with the 12 squared and 21 squared equaled 144, 441, 13 squared, we flipped the numbers around and it worked, okay? So just because we observed these 3 examples, does that mean it's gonna work all the time? No, we would have to figure out every single example, or like she said, we would have to apply a mathematical principle. So if we wanted to apply a mathematical principle, let's think about this one. Let's say that I had the measure of angle A is less than 180 degrees, making it obtuse. Okay? How can I show that measure of angle A being like our variable, like x, how can I show that it works for all angles? How can I do that? Any ideas? Okay, well, what if I basically multiplied both sides by a half? And now I've got half of measure of angle A is less than what number?
90.
90. Okay, so if an obtuse angle is bisected, cut in half, then you will always form 2 congruent angles that are acute. Is less than 90 acute? Yeah, so we just showed mathematically that it would work. If you ever take the, using a mathematical equation, if you take half of both sides, it'll always end up working, okay? All right. So, example 2. We need to solve for x. Ideas. What do you want to do? Go ahead.
Distribute the 4.
Okay. So last week when we were doing some of these solving equations, some of you said to divide by 4. Why do you want to distribute this time and not divide by 4? I'm just curious more than anything.
That's just the way I learned it.
Okay. If the -5 was like a -20, would you still distribute?
No,
Why?
because it's easier to divide by 4.
Okay, because, all right, since this number here is not divisible by 4, that's why you're distributing. I was just curious, just because the other day we did it different. So -5 is equal to 8x minus 12, okay? We add 12 to both sides, we get 7 equal to 8x. We divide by 8, we get x is equal to 7/8. Are we using inductive reasoning, as in are we observing patterns, or are we using deductive reasoning? We are using definitions, principles, concepts in order to figure out what x is. We're using deductive, okay? All right? We're using the concept of inverse operations. We're undoing things. These are mathematical principles that, you have learned in algebra, okay? All right, example 3. Triangle ABC is equilateral, okay? If it helps, we've talked about the idea of a picture's worth 1,000 words. Tick, tick, tick. You can also go angle, angle, angle. Okay, if you need to mark, make sure that you understand equilateral is equiangular. Is ABD equilateral? Okay, if it's not, give me a reason why. Yeah.
Because there's no proof to tell us that it is equilateral.
Okay. Yeah.
BD is longer than BC.
Okay. BD is longer than BC.
And to go along with that, BC is equal to AB, so they're not equal.
BC is, what'd you say,
So
equal to?
BC is equal to AB.
Okay.
And then AB isn't equal to BD.
Okay. Anybody else? Okay. So you could also use the idea of like, these angles are going to be, this angle A is going to be bigger, so on and so forth. So we would say no. All right. So what would you think on this one? Inductive, are you observing? Or deductive, are you using like mathematical concepts in order to come up with your answer?
Inductive.
You said inductive, inductive, inductive. Anybody else? Kennedy?
I said deductive
Why'd you say deductive?
because, you're using facts.
Because of what?
Because you're using facts.
All right, we're using like facts, like the fact that this length is longer than this length. You could use the idea of, we talked about some of the angles of a triangle is equal to 180, right? So if this angle is already bigger than this angle, well, then that means that this angle is going to be changed based upon the fact that this angle is different, it's not going to equal the other ones. So you're using mathematical principles to figure out your answer. So I would go with deductive reasoning here, okay? We're going based upon concepts of triangles, okay? All right? Now, this is something that you are going to do later on when we get to like what we call linear programming. The hashtag is not like, Twitter, right? It's referring to some operation. We don't know what that operation is. But if we apply that operation to all of these numbers, so if we do, 6, hashtag 8, we get 7. If we do 10, hashtag 2, we get 6. If we do -3, hashtag -2, we get -2.5, okay? So that hashtag is some operation. We don't know what that operation is. That's not our goal to figure out the operation. But what we want to do is we want to see if we can figure out what other solutions could be based upon what we're seeing. So, anybody have an idea of what 4 hashtag 8 might be?
Whatever the answer is what, is like this, the midpoint of 6 to 8. Or-
Okay,
So like how 6 and 8, in between that is 7,
okay.
and how 2 to 10 is 8, but you, like,
I was just asking, what is 4 hashtag 8?
oh, that's, 6.
6. Do you agree with that?
Yes.
Okay. Does anybody know what -5 hashtag 0 is?
Negative 2.5.
Does everybody agree that it's -2.5? Okay. What's 7 hashtag 11?
9.
9. Okay, so now, what is the operation? What is hashtag? What is it having you do? Find the middle number. I don't know if I would go with midpoint because midpoint has an x and y value. We're only finding one number, okay? But it's basically finding like the average, the middle number, something, okay? So, what type of reasoning are we doing when we figured out how to solve these problems? You're going with deductive. Anybody else? No, anybody else wanna, what do you wanna go with? Why do you wanna go with inductive? We're observing a pattern. You observed a pattern that said, hey, 7 is the middle of these two numbers. 6 is the middle of these two numbers. -2.5 is the middle of these two numbers. Okay? Now, if we knew what hashtag actually was, like someone came out and told us, and we used mathematical principles to come up with these, then we could go with deductive. But we're going with, we're observing a pattern and going based upon that. Okay? So be careful with that. All right? Questions? All right? That's basically, it for today.